Hello, and thank you for joining us this evening for Flattening the Curve, balancing health, wellness, and spirituality during the era of COVID. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Thank you for joining us this evening for Flattening the Curve. I'm your host, Paulette Payne, and I am joined by some amazing panelists. But before we get started, our apologies. We were experiencing technical difficulties with Zoom this evening, and so we've had to record the broadcast, and I hope you will take the opportunity to watch, share, tag, and leave your questions in the bottom of the thread, because these panelists are going to bring some wonderful information for you to get through quarantine. So I'm joined this evening by Greene. Candance, will you wave so the folks will know who you are? She is a spiritual health advocate, author, and podcaster. And I'm also joined by Crystal Wilson-Payne, who is a licensed psychologist, and KaCey Venning, who is a mental health advocate and author, and Dan McDonald-Smith, who is a third year medical student and researcher. So you guys, we're going to just jump into it. Well, before we jump into it, let me give you all a chance to just introduce yourselves and tell us a little about yourself and how you came to practice mental health advocacy, spiritual health advocacy, Cherishedfl, and of course, Dr. McDonald-Smith. And I know you're not doctor yet, but I love saying it. Tell us why you chose to go into the medical field. So just give us a little bit of information about yourselves. So we'll start with you, Candance.
Well, first of all, thank you, Paulette, for this opportunity and the platform you provided for all of us, and we really appreciate it. So my name is Candance Greene. I am the founder of Cherishedfl Communications, LLC, and the founder of and creator of the Peace Break. And basically, Cherishedfl Communications is my oasis that I created to help people to realign with the peace of God. I noticed that for myself and many people that were a part of my kind of social media feed were anxious and worried and afraid consistently. And this is before COVID-19. This is just on a daily basis, panicking on Sunday night because they have to go back to work on Monday, and just overall feeling just anxious. And so I said to my husband, you know what, I really wish there was a way that I could help people and myself through this whole thing of being anxious, especially about Monday mornings. And my husband said, well, we have everything we need in the basement to start a podcast. And so that's where Cherishedfl, the podcast, began in 2016. And with the Peace Break, what I did was I introduced just the idea of breathing and the importance of breathing, and how when you breathe, it slows down the heart rate, and it really helps you to just calm yourself, like internally, like your organs, and just your mental capacity. And what I do during the Peace Break is breathing plus praying to realign with the peace of God. And so that's what I've been doing through Cherishedfl Communications, and for those who are following me on social media.
Thank you, Candance. And we'll come back to that Peace Break before this broadcast is over. KaCey, introduce yourself quickly for us.
Hello, everybody. My name is KaCey Venning. I am a faith-based mental health advocate. Got into that work because it's very personal to me. I have mental illness and mental health diagnoses on both sides of my family. And so it's always been that debate of nature versus nurture. And I found myself as a teenager exhibiting signs myself. And it showed up in low self-esteem and overcompensating. I was that one child that wanted to please everybody. And sometimes that's the child that gets ignored because they're doing everything right. There can't be anything wrong. And so I was diagnosed with depression at 16 and anxiety as well. And so once I realized that people were having a very hard time having this conversation, especially in communities of color, I wanted to talk about it more, but I was still a little afraid because of the stigma. I'm also a licensed minister, and as I would share my story in church, I would have older saints say to me that, oh, girl, you just need to pray some more, or you need to get your faith up, or, are you sure you repented of all your sins? And I realized that we have not had this conversation in our faith communities and our churches either. And that I go by this slogan, well, I go by two, but one is Jesus in therapy, that I can have both and I need both. But also that I'm built for this, and that any and everything that the enemy throws my way, I am built to withstand it, that I use it to build me up, to make me better, not to break me. And I tell people all the time, you can bend, just don't break. And so I got into this work and decided to write 2 books, one for young people who are experiencing anxiety or just not sure how to deal with their changing hormones and emotions, and then another one that is faith-based around what we see in the Bible and in Christian history around mental illness, even though they did not call it that. And so I'm just super excited to share my story and hopefully to unlock some other folks. And I get to do that work on a daily basis.
Awesome. Very powerful purposes that you all are fulfilling. Crystal, let us know a little bit about you.
Well, first of all, thank you again, Paulette. I'm wondering if maybe we have some, or you and my husband might have some relatives somewhere with the last name Payne. We'll have to talk about that later.
That's an offline conversation.
Yes. But thank you for having me today for this discussion. I'm a licensed professional counselor. I've been in the field for about 15 years. I'm currently in private practice. My practice is called Journey to Better. And that's what I see my role as with my clients. I'm a partner on their journey to becoming a better version of themselves. I believe the most powerful thing that can happen in therapy is self-awareness. There's just a lot of denial about what's going on in our mind and in our heart and in our spirit. And if we can just become aware of certain things, then we can make the choice to make better decisions, better choices in our life. So that's what I do. I'm a licensed professional counselor, and I'm glad to be here to give my input on what's going on with this pandemic.
Thank you so much. And Dr. in Waiting, Smith, McDonald-Smith, tell us a little bit about your journey to the medical profession. And of course, we'll get in a little bit later about your research around physical movement, physicality, and mental health.
I'd love to. Thank you so much again, as everyone said, for having us here. Really, as a mature student, coming into medicine was really just never an option. I grew up in South London, which is quite a deprived region of London, particularly in the southeast where I was born and raised. I was raised primarily by my mother. We had a large family. There wasn't much money or opportunities to go around. And I look back and I realized that medicine and just higher education in general, such as colleges and universities, weren't necessarily something that was ever on the agenda. And as a Black male, in particular, with a lot of gangs and violence, drug abuse and use surrounding my neighborhoods, and of course, I'm not unique in that. When I said I want to study medicine or I want to become a medical doctor, that they laughed at me. And I think in a way, I laughed at myself as well, just at the concept that could be possible. And what was just really wonderful is that after volunteering abroad in Atlanta, in fact, and which is, of course, where I met you, Sister Payne, and having that opportunity and having my faith built, it gave me the opportunity and most importantly, the confidence in God that actually I can do this, I can possibly do this. And so in coming back to the UK after that voluntary intermission, I applied to higher education and to colleges, universities. Obviously, I was, by the grace of God, accepted into one of them. And now I'm actually, after doing somewhat of an access course, I'm not sure how it equates to the US, but of course that kind of segues into higher education. I was able to obviously be accepted, and in so doing, I've done research projects, widening participation that involves opening opportunities for higher education, additional courses, opportunities for Black, Asian, and minority ethnics throughout. And it's been absolutely incredible to see that healing both in the community and, of course, in the body as well.
You know, I'm just so impressed just listening to you all's backstory. And let me just share really quickly. And please, again, forgive the technical difficulties, but we have no control over it. But I see it as an opportunity for the 5 of us to engage more intimately and prayerfully. Once you see the replay, you can see the power that resides among these 4 panelists. But a little backstory about this series. So I prayed about how I could be an impact what impact I could make or have on this COVID-19 crisis. You know, I can't physically go out and help deliver groceries and things because I too am at risk. And so after prayer, God told me, use your gift, use the gift that I gave you. Use the gift of communication. Use your experiences in television and use your love for people and sharing their stories, and I'll give you the rest of it. And so that's how this 4-part series came about. And I dedicate it to him. I dedicate it to all those who are suffering right now. This is a hard time. It's a hard time for us all. And so just understand and know that you're not alone. We're in this together. So we have to protect ourselves. And in protecting ourselves, we're protecting you and each other. So we're going to go on and get started. COVID-19. So many people, as I said, are suffering. They're suffering in the area of mental health. They're suffering in the area of emotional health, and they're suffering in the area of spiritual health. So I want to first start, because it starts here. What, as a man thinketh, so is he. So let's talk about the mental trauma that this experience is causing our society. So KaCey, before the show, we were talking about young people. Let's start there. Let's start with our youth. I saw today a friend of mine, in fact, a member of my church, of course, as we all are working from home, many are parents, many have young people there, and they're in school and they're not able to interact and interface with their friends. And so mom and dad are working closed doors because they're in Zooms too, and they need quiet and focus. And so the children are off doing schoolwork, and then when they're done, they just have time. And so the picture that he posted said, if I remember correctly, it said, "Come out." So that was a plea, a cry from him to his dad. You're here, Dad. I'm here, Dad. But we can't play. Mm-hmm. So let's talk about the mental impact this COVID-19 quarantine is having on young people.
Yeah, I love that, because for so much that we hear in the news, we very rarely hear about how this is impacting young people, aside from school year being closed, right? And what we know is that there's so many students and young people who go to school because it's an outlet. School becomes a safe place and a safe haven for them. And so I immediately pray for those who are in situations at home, unlike your friend, who aren't safe, who are scared every morning and every night because they don't know what's going to happen, because now they're home all day with people that aren't taking good care of them. But in addition to that piece of it, younger students really don't understand, other than I just don't get to go to school anymore and I'm home. And when I'm home on the weekends and when I'm home in the evening, we do these certain things. So why can't we do these certain things all day now? And it's hard for them to reconcile that mom and dad and caregivers still has to work, right? For those who are fortunate enough to have a job still, in order for them to still have a roof over their head. And so for younger students, it's really hard to accept that and to understand it. And a lot of times I tell parents and the parents I work with in the school system, sometimes you have to reschedule your day. And some of us have a little more flexibility in our day when we're working from home than others, but build time in during your work day to have lunch with your child, right? So even if you have a stringent schedule, you're still supposed to have a lunch break. Make sure you respect those boundaries and spend time with your children in the house that's uninterrupted, and they get to see you during the day versus them having to wait until 5 and 6 o'clock. because they're not just contending with, I'm not in school anymore, but I'm also not in school, and I don't know what this new normal is, being home with mommy and daddy all day either. And so for them, they may be developing some level of anxiety, some level of confusion, and if we're not careful to help them unpack how they're feeling, it can turn into something else that we don't want later down the road. And make sure that parents are getting their kids out for sunshine and fresh air and for quick bursts of energy and just a walk or a ride around the block. That does wonders for their energy level and also for their peace of mind to be able to move and not have to just sit at a computer all day as well. But our babies are going through as well. They just show it in a different way. And it's up to us as adults to take a pause and to make sure that we're very intentional in how we're spending time with them, so that even if they don't understand fully, they still understand that somebody took some time for me, even if it was just 10 minutes.
Exactly. And I love that piece about parents carving out time, not just for lunch, but just for physical activity. And that's a perfect segue to you, Dan, to talk about the physicality of, or the importance of physicality in mental health, particularly at this time. So if you could go on and share with us that discussion.
I'd love to, yeah. So at the University of Nottingham, in which I am studying, what we're doing is we're running a study in which we want to look at the interplay between physical activity and mental health during lockdown of COVID-19. And what we hope is that we will accumulate data over now, which is actually the opening of the questionnaire is out now, if anyone wants to take it, 3 months and then 6 months, and hopefully thereafter, as a way of saying, basically, what was it like? How can we quantify the mental health in which people were going through? And what we hope to discover or hope to understand is really at what level is ideal for the optimization of the mind. Because what we found in a previous study is that there is almost like a bell curve, a peak, if it were, where on the one hand, athletes and those awesome people who are just doing crazy things with their body are just as stressed as people who don't have any physical activity at all. Now, there's a number of reasons why that could be. That include obviously the stress, the pressure, sponsorships, and managing that with potential studies if they're students. But what we want to find is that ideal, and therefore extend that to say, how can we medically apply that to people such as the elderly and those at risk? And how can we facilitate that just in general? You know, can we make a park that facilitates a pull-up bar or something like that? Or can we encourage some type of physical activity at home? And so that's what we really want to do here. And there's no joke, there's no really question of whether physical activity is integrated with mental health. But for us, it's dissecting it in a way that we can apply it now in the NHS and kind of gather that data and hopefully roll it out piece by piece, obviously to help people in the UK and obviously worldwide.
Those findings will be very interesting. I don't know if you all have seen the meme, but it's 100 years. And each of those 100 years, there's a pandemic. Mm-hmm. So while 100 years seems a long way away, that research will be tremendous in helping the future understand the importance of moving and getting the heart rate up and helping our elderly and our young people and just the population in general survive crises like this. Thank you for that. What in your observation are the people in London moving around? Do you know, in terms of here in Atlanta, in my neighborhood, I see people that I haven't seen ever before walking in the neighborhood, jogging. Look, I'm walking and trying to jog in the neighborhood. So are you finding that? Are you seeing that just in your day-to-day activities?
That's such a good question. So we are still collecting data. So I can't give you a definite answer just yet. Give me about 6 months or so, and I would love to have this conversation again. But what we are finding is that certain groups are more active and certain groups are less active. So there was recent data, and this is something I'm really passionate about and something that interests me in general, is that we are finding the time in which we're spending on social media and the internet is increasing.
Mhm.
Okay. I mean, I think in the US, it was something like 5% had a social media account in 2011. And then in 2017, we found that they have 74%
Oh,
have
really?
multiple social media accounts. So it's increasing exponentially. And so what we want to find is really, how does that interact? Because males spend more time on certain social media accounts, females on other accounts, this age group and that age group. And what people are doing is that they're trying to predict, well, if males are doing this within this demographic at this age with a college degree, then how can we tweak the algorithms in which we can target more people, or more effectively those people that we already have? And so what we're finding is that sadly different groups are doing different levels of physical activity, and sadly that's mainly because of the disparity within socioeconomic regions. And so you find obviously rich regions of London are, yeah, I can run, I've got the resources, I've got the time, I've got the money. But those who obviously don't have work, their concern isn't health, it's putting food on the table.
Mm-hmm. And certainly class exists, and there's of course elements of racism that exist that feed and speak to these disparities. That research is tremendous, and I would love to have a conversation in 6 months to find out what your findings are. Moving on to Candance, I'd like to talk about still focusing on the youth right now, and I got to keep looking at my time just to make sure I get everybody, because there's a lot of questions here that I want to cover. I love following your stories about your children and their spiritual growth, their spiritual coming of age, if you will. For young people right now, what would you tell parents, those who are religious, those who might not be so religious, those who are grounded in another spiritual ideology? What would you tell them in terms of helping their young person to reconnect and realign to the degree that they are able to understand it, depending on their age, during this crisis? Because as KaCey said, so many things are out of whack right now. The equilibrium is off. Their equilibrium, the lifestyle is off. So what would you tell parents experiencing that?
Well, I actually think that having an honest conversation about what's happening is really helpful. You can't shield your children from everything. And I believe that explaining what is going on really does give them insight. And kids also react to things the way that they see you react to things. Okay, so I know that if I panic, they're gonna panic. But if I'm calm, then they're calm. And I've been both, the panicky mom and the calm mom. And
Panicky mom, Candance. You have such this aura of peace and calm.
There are many times. But and so I think too, when your children see you, I think praying, when your children see you just connecting to something that makes you calm, then that helps them to deal with whatever the situation is. I know with my children, I have spoken to them about what is happening, why they're not in school, how we're going to move forward from here. And then there are times when we just say, okay, you know what, let's come together as a family and pray. We're going to pray together. Let's come together and let's discuss this. Let's talk about what all of this means. And if I don't know the answer, then I say, I really don't know, but we can research it together, or, let's find the answer. But I think for kids to hear an honest answer, and for children to be able to know that, okay, I can go to my parent and I can go to my parent for prayer. I can go to my parent just to be calm. My kids do the peace breaks. They breathe, if they're anxious. and just having discussion with them. If you have that open line of communication, that really does help them to be able to get through these certain situations, and to explain to them that I've never experienced a pandemic myself. So I'm anxious about certain things, but we'll walk through this together, and we will pray together, and we will continue to discuss what's going on together, because we are experiencing this together.
You know, I think, oh, I'm sorry, go on.
No, go ahead.
I think when you have these honest conversations with your young people, it builds a level of character and confidence in them that I don't think they would have otherwise. You know, if mom can be honest about, you know, she's anxious, she's fearful, then I can be honest. And KaCey, speaking to what the mental health piece, then I can be honest about how I feel. So that's critical. Thank you for illuminating that for us. Crystal, I want to talk a little bit about the emotional side of all of this. So, you know, you have children. Candance, you have children. I don't have children, KaCey, and Dan, I'm pretty sure y'all are in my boat. But regardless of what boat you sail, we all, at least I'll speak for me, when the shutdown happened, I thought, oh my gosh, now I can do X, Y, Z, L&P. I can do all of them consecutively, and I'll just have a beautiful, shiny, finished product. And I was stressing myself out to no end. So talk to us about why you don't have to do all the things, or if you just do decide to do all the things, do them and do them well. But let's talk more specifically about doing all the things. Is it necessary right now, or should we just rest?
Well, there is no right answer about what we should or shouldn't do. So free yourself of shoulds and supposed tos at this time. That's what I've told all my clients. So I remember maybe during the first week or so, there was this meme going around that if you don't leave this quarantine without a new skill, a degree, all these things, then time was never your problem. And I'm like, but we're in a pandemic. Maybe my mind isn't on developing a new skill, or now I'm schooling my children at home, or maybe I'm worrying about my job. So I may not have the mental capacity now to learn something else. So this has affected people in different ways, as you just said, Paulette. Some people, it freed up mental capacity. So maybe they can develop a new skill. Maybe they can take a class. Maybe this does feel more like a restful time. Other people, it added more to their plate or complicated their plate. So there's nothing, I don't have capacity for something new. I'm trying to deal with today, each day. So I know a lot of people felt pressure to create more busyness. And I think that also had to do with anxiety. We're in a situation where we are completely out of control. That's just the truth about what happens outside of our household. Each day we turn on the news, there's something else that has happened, or something's been taken away, or something's been added, and we have no control over what's going to happen the next day. But maybe I can control cleaning my house every day, or maybe I can control this. And it's from a place of anxiety. And when this first happened, what I really felt God speaking to me was, this was a time of rest and reset. So we needed a time to rest our mind, rest everything about us, because we are in a busy society, right? And we leaned on busyness to say that we were being productive, successful, happy, all of those things, but we were just busy. And all those things have now been taken away. And what do you have left? Some people are in a household that they haven't really been in. They haven't been around their children this much ever. Who are these little people, right? Or who is this person that I've been in a relationship with or been married to because I've been working, I've been so busy. So maybe you need to rest in getting to know your family, or you need to reset the priorities in your life right now so that you leave this quarantine, we leave this pandemic at a better place than we started.
That's beautiful. I love this whole idea of being, or showing yourself grace. Yeah. And also showing others around you grace. Let's segue into the guilt some may feel for enjoying the restfulness of this season. And also on top of that, the guilt that they may feel because, gee, I do have a job. I am able to work from home. I do have my family around me. You know, life is good, but there's so many other people who are suffering. Let's talk about that emotional piece. And KaCey, I'd actually like to hear from all of you on this piece. What do you say about the guilt for enjoying the rest, knowing that there are people on the other side that are struggling, that are mourning, you know, that are strapped financially? How do you reconcile those two? Let's go on and continue with you, Crystal.
Okay. Well, I say change guilt to grateful. Don't feel guilty, be grateful. Because guilt comes from a place of doing something wrong. Is it wrong for you to still have a job? Is it wrong for you to enjoy your family? Is it wrong for you to enjoy rest? No. So you can be grateful for what you have and still show compassion and do what you can to serve others in this time. So switch that G from guilt to gratitude.
Enjoy that. I love it. KaCey.
Yeah, I agree with Crystal. I also, and I know I had to tell myself this as well, that if I don't have my job, then I can't help and support either. And so instead of feeling guilty that I was one of the quote unquote lucky ones, to Crystal's point, I'm grateful because now I have the ability to maybe give a little bit more to someone who does not have it. It frees me up from the level of stress that I can then research other resources for parents and family members, because I'm not bogged down mentally and emotionally with, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? How am I going to pay my bills? And so it frees me up to still serve. It frees me up to still do for other people by having my job. So instead of feeling guilty, look at it as a resource that you can use for those who don't have the same opportunity that you're having right now.
Very good point. Dan, what about you? How should you reconcile, or how can one reconcile this guilt potentially for having a job, having family, having the good things, knowing that there's so much devastation?
Yeah, so I think, like, as a medical student, and particularly being in hospitals, I have a maybe slightly different mentality, maybe more pragmatic mentality that goes along with what's been said, and that is do what you can. The truth is that we can't do everything for everyone. You know, we're not the Christ, we're not Jesus, but we can reach up and reach out. And I think by reaching up to God to know whom we can serve, which I love, you kind of mentioned at the beginning, Paulette, how this obviously came about. That is what we can do, and I find that switching mentality enabling rather than debilitating. Okay, instead of, again, having that guilt which weighs us down. And again, we've been talking about emotional and mental health already. We know that guilt isn't going to help us. You know, even in the effectiveness of our mind in caring for our little ones, if you have them, in caring for our partners, in caring for ourselves, guilt won't make it any better. It's not an enabling factor. So I think we need to switch gears and say, well, okay, I've got these resources, but how can I help the people around me? And therefore, how can I enable them to help the people around them?
I like that idea of me being enabled and then me enabling someone else, because during this pandemic, there is a spirit of me. We saw this in stores, you know, hoarding mounds and mounds of products, you know, so it's this me, survival of the fittest. But in reality, it's me, how can I help myself so that I can help you? And that trickle effect, that snowball effect then comes into play. Candance, did you have any thoughts on that?
Yes, it's the same as when you get on an airplane and they tell you to put the oxygen mask on yourself first before your children or anyone else that's traveling with you. It's the same thing. I was listening to a podcast by Brene Brown, and she was talking about how people get into this whole line of thinking where I can't honor what I'm feeling because someone else is suffering more than I am. So I downplay my experience because it's not as bad as someone else's. And so I really did suffer from that when this whole thing started. But then I started thinking, okay, but my experience that I'm having right now is my experience. And I have to be gentle with myself and show grace to myself. And once I'm gentle with myself and I'm showing grace to myself, then I'm able to be gentle with someone else and extend that grace to them. And so, Crystal, I'm very glad that you said that we have to change our perspective to see it as us being grateful for this opportunity, because I do see this time as a time of rest. This is our be still and know that I am God season. and I really am grateful for this time. And I'm grateful for the opportunity that I have to rest and to reconnect with my family and to reconnect with my children and my spouse. And I don't feel guilty about that anymore. But it took me a minute to get there.
Yeah. So you're now experiencing the joy that comes from grace, from peace, and then from having the things that you need for yourself and your family. That's a beautiful place to be. It truly is. Let's see. So let's go to KaCey. Let's talk about, and I'm just looking at my notes here. Let's talk about balancing all of the things. So, we talk about anxiety, we talk about stress, we talk about overwhelm, and that can certainly be a reality for many right now. Mm-hmm. From a mental health perspective, what are some tools people can use to balance and to center their mental capacity so that they can be effective in their families and their work and for themselves?
Yeah. That's definitely something that I have to be intentional about. And so I'm so glad that you brought that up, because that is my trigger for my anxiety. I know that when I am doing too much, I need to take a pause, because something is going to take over me that I may not be able to control for a couple of weeks before I can recenter and reset myself. And so sometimes, and then I think we've said it, Crystal said it, busyness in some of our minds equates to being productive. Mm-hmm. And I take this approach with a lot of young people when I'm talking to parents, that we want to be high achievers or high performers versus overachievers, that it does nothing for us to have this long list of things to check off to say, look how good I am, how many instruments I can play, how many clubs I was the president of, and then you're burnt out at 25 versus here are these 2 or 3 things that I excelled and rocked out, but I'm still healthy and whole and can continue to move forward and not feeling as though I've lived 3 lifetimes before I've hit 30, trying to do all of the things. And so it's really about boundaries. It's about priority. It's about this idea of grace versus guilt, knowing that no is powerful. And sometimes you have to say no to yourself, and no in the sense that you can do everything, you just can't do it all at the same time. And that's okay. And to be able to really identify what your non-negotiables are and what are those nice to-dos. And when you can divide your activities, your goals, your needs in those 2 categories, you can tackle one. And then as time gets freed up, you can add those nice to-dos. Because what happens when we become overwhelmed, contrary to what people believe, you cannot multitask, because your brain literally stops, even if it's for a nanosecond, to focus on this other thing that you're doing. And you're really tiring yourself out because you're overworking your brain, trying to go back and forth between all of these things. And then we wonder why we're tired, even though we haven't moved our bodies physically. We're tired in our spirits, we're tired in our emotions, we're tired in our minds, because we're trying to do too much, and then nothing gets done because we get frustrated, we throw our hands up, and we just chuck everything to the wind because we didn't take time to set those priorities and those boundaries around our non-negotiables, our have-to-dos, versus this would just be wonderful if I could get to it. And so just letting people know that no is a good word. It's not a cuss word. It's not a bad word. I say no to folks at church, and I'm in leadership. I say no to my mama. I say no to myself.
Not your mama, KaCey.
If you don't say no, people are asking you because you say yes. And if you keep saying yes without taking a chance to refuel yourself, nothing that you give to them is going to be efficient or effective for them. You're just a warm body who showed up to check off the box. And so it's just
powerful. And you made me think about my own self. So yeah, we all want to do all the things and be everything to everybody. I want to do that for my family. But I had to get to a point, in fact, my sister was beautiful in helping me to remember this, or to remind me of this, or to show me this. Paulette, no is okay. You can tell mama no. You can tell me no. But when she said that, I cringed. I'm like, but no, I can't say no. I'm not serving you, but you are serving the other person by saying no, by honoring your capacity. And it also brought to mind, in terms of multitasking, I'll be around the house or at work or wherever the case may be, and I'll have so many balls in the air that I'll start on one thing and I'll leave it because I'm focusing on something else. I'll go, turn around and see that it's not complete. I'm like, well, what happened there? So yeah, multitasking is an inefficient way to get the job done. So thank you for highlighting that for us. Candance, can you talk about, actually, Dan, let me ask you really quickly, how do you balance all of this? How do you balance home? How do you balance school? How do you balance research? Of course, that's part of school. How are you able to balance all of that in these certain, in this climate?
Yeah, I'd love to talk about that, because actually just going back to what KaCey kind of mentioned, and where I would just like to maybe add a dimension to it, is that in medical school, we have to be competitive. Doing medical school is just not enough. If you graduate medical school with what we define in the UK as a first-class degree, so you get like something like 70% overall, that's not guaranteeing you the place that you want, particularly if you want to go in, for example, surgery or neurosurgery. How many internships have you done? How many clubs have you founded? How many sports do you do? And these are just sadly the questions they genuinely do ask. It's as competitive in the US as it is in the UK, and it's as competitive to get the residencies thereafter as it was to apply or get into medical school in the first place. And so just linked to what you're saying, Paulette, is like coming from a background of overdoing, overcompensating, I definitely have a mindset of that. And really what I've realized is that in the busyness, there's a level of productivity, there's a level of fulfilling one's potential. But what I've realized is that the key is always in the timing. It will always be in the timing. It is saying that I can do anything, but I cannot do everything. And so in saying that, it says, okay, what do I need to do right now? I need to pass this exam. I need to look after my wife. I need to maybe look after my little ones. I need to study, and then fit things around that. But it's also acknowledging that sometimes we are the problem. Sometimes we need to say, you know what, I don't need to spend that much time on Netflix or on social media. I don't need to, and that's just the genuine truth. I'm actually writing another essay at the moment for a social media topic for a British society, and going through all these statistics, who needs to spend 9 hours a day on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter? Why do we what does it gain? And I think once we realize that, you'll find that there are things that we can do that are productive, but they also enhance our energy levels, just like maybe physical activity or being just around the right people or environment. But there's things that drain us, and knowing the two categories, what drains and what revives us, are two very important aspects. And so I'd say first you need to know what are your priorities and what you want to achieve, because you can't do everything, but you can do anything you put your mind to. And then asking yourself, okay, I know what I need to do, and saying, what will drain me and how much will it drain me, and what resources can I dedicate to it? And within those four, almost like a quadrant, within those four aspects, then you can say, okay, these are the resources I'm going to allot. And if it doesn't match, or if I can't reach that, let's say, for example, that first degree level, then so be it. I'll cut it off there, because it's not worth it. It's encroaching on a resource such as time with family or monetary that I'm just not willing to sacrifice. And that's what I'd say.
I appreciate that because it then speaks to priorities. What you value, you prioritize. And sometimes it's just one priority at a time. Then other times it's two. So certainly knowing your capacity, knowing what's most important in the moment, and then taking the steps to meet the need or whatever that case may be. Thank you for that.
Paulette, may I add one more thing?
Please, yes, please.
One thing that I'm seeing with some of my clients is that people are actually working more now that they're at home. So I was kind of going back to KaCey's point about having boundaries. It's very important now that many of us who never worked from home are doing it now, that you still should have like physical boundaries about where you work, so that like a room where you do your work. So don't have everything all happening at the same time. Kids doing school, you're working, all that in the same place. So try to have physical boundaries about where you do your work, where the kids are schooling, things like that, and have a set cutoff time, because people are still feeling burnt out working from home. There's no traffic now. There's, a lot of the things that were causing us stress by going into the office, we just switched them out for other things at home. So allow yourself to have a cutoff point for work. You get up at a certain time, get things done, but don't feel like because you're at home, you're not doing anything or you're not doing enough. Mm-hmm. You're still doing your job at the level that you can. Let that be enough.
I like that. Enough. That's a critical word for now, for such a time as this, because again, we all are so strapped with time and we want to do everything, but enough is enough. Enough is enough. And it's worthy of celebration because you've completed a task or you've met the deadline or whatever the case may be. Enough is enough, and you rest peacefully knowing that your best was enough. Candance, let's talk about the peace breaks that you had mentioned earlier. And then Crystal, I want to come back to you and talk about how you define self-care and what that looks like, and then what it doesn't look like, or does it look like anything? And I want you all to answer that and how you practice self-care during this crisis. So Candance.
Well, I feel like I have a lot of responses to what everybody was saying. I was taking down notes and everything, but the peace break is basically a moment in your day that you move away from your desk, your phone, everything, and you walk somewhere away from everything and you breathe. You do breathing exercises and pray. And I encourage people to do that all the time. But when this whole pandemic thing started and we were on the stay-at-home mandate, I prayed and I said, God, what can I do to help, to encourage? And so what I started doing is the peace break live at 12 o'clock every day on Instagram and Facebook. Okay, but what I noticed is that what Crystal was saying, everybody is still just as stressed now than they were when we were working, going to our jobs. I'm coming from a whole season of overwhelm where I was just overwhelmed by everything, everyone's schedule. If you had seen my Google Calendar, it looked like Skittles, like a whole bag of Skittles, so many different colors. Everybody is color coded for who's going to pick who up, who's going to go here, what meeting I had, what meeting my husband had. I was coming from that and I thought, okay, well, we have this time to rest. But I'm noticing that my employers, the longer we're in this season, the more anxious they're becoming about whatever decisions they have to make with all of the staff and all of the work that we're doing. Because what I do is I work for a union that represents teachers. So you know how anxious the leadership team is where I work. And so it's more and more and more and more. And we've got to be on Facebook and we've got to be doing this and we've got to be doing that. And so I just say, you know what? I don't want to go back to the overwhelm. So that's why I started doing the peace breaks every day. And what I've noticed is that the people who are doing the peace breaks with me, logging in to do the breathing exercises with me, are saying the same thing. I'm tired of Zoom. I'm tired of the conference calls. I'm tired of people trying to call me at 9 o'clock at night to get me to do work. how do I put boundaries in place when I'm working from home? How can I say to my boss, it's 9 o'clock, you have crossed the boundary with me? And so that's part of what, for me, the peace break is a reminder that we can be connected with the peace of God in the middle of all this chaos, not just the chaos of COVID, but the chaos of what we have to do, those of us who are able to work from home, what we have to do at home, and how we are supporting our families through this, and how we are supporting loved ones who have lost loved ones, and how we are maintaining ourselves through this period. This is not an easy time for any of us at all. For adults, for children, for our seniors, for those in ministry. It's quite a bit. And I have to be connected with the peace of God in order to maintain my sanity and to maintain just the ability to get through the day. Mm-hmm. So that's what the peace break is all about. Just breathing, regulating my heart rate, getting myself calm, praying, reconnecting with God, and in doing that, encouraging others as well.
Thank you for that. And Candance, before we sign off, I want you to lead us and the audience in a peace break. And so we have just a few more minutes left. Crystal, I want to talk about, and everyone, I want to talk about self-care, what that means, what that looks like. Social media tells us one thing. I may tell you what I love to do for self-care, but let's unpack self-care and what it should mean for you. So I'd like everyone to answer that, and then we'll have Candance close us out with a peace break. But before we do that, thank you all for watching. If you have questions, of course, put your questions below. And I'm asking my panelists, once this video is uploaded, if you could go back and just periodically check the comments and see what people have to say, So Crystal, and then everyone, let's talk about self-care.
Well, self-care is anything that you choose to do to take care of yourself mentally, physically, spiritually, emotionally, all the things that are you. And as KaCey said earlier, we can't pour from an empty vessel. And many of us are having to give out more. As a therapist, I'm giving out more. As family members, we care about each other, but we're not able to connect physically. So we have to find other ways to connect with people. So that's one way that we need to take care of ourselves, is to get creative about the way we connect. Because isolation is one of the reasons that people are struggling in their mental health right now, is that we're feeling very disconnected from the world physically, emotionally, in so many other ways. Another thing for self-care, I would say, is very close to what Candance is talking about, something called mindfulness. And that's just being present in the moment. So I talked about earlier that we're basically not in control of a lot of what's going on around us, but what we have in our hand is today, is right now, is 7:59 p.m. That's what we have in our hand. So that's what we need to be present in. So when you practice mindfulness, whatever you're doing in that moment, be fully aware of what you're doing. So if you're washing a dish, be just washing the dish. Be in the moment of feeling the bubbles on your hand and wiping the dish clean and seeing it become clean. If you're taking a bath, feel the warmth on your body and notice the temperature of your body changing. If you're going for a walk, notice the colors around you. So try your best to be present and find enjoyment in the moment. So that would be mindfulness. And relaxation techniques, which really goes back to what Candance said, deep breathing, relaxing your body and your mind.
That's wonderful. I took a mindfulness class about 2 years ago through my hospital, through my doctor's office, and it was life-changing. So then, of course, I went and I downloaded all the mindfulness apps, all the breathing apps. But there's one app, and I'll be sure to post it, and I'll be sure to post it for everyone to check out themselves. It's a free app. It's called Meditation, and there are different modules. Some of course are, you have to pay for some of them, but then there are others that are free. And it's guided breathing techniques. And I tell you, I do it before I go to bed many nights, and it changes my life. And I find myself drifting off, and sometimes I have this out of body experience where I can feel myself just drifting.
Yeah,
it's the best thing in the world. So yeah, mindfulness is critical for sure.
One other thing I wanted to add was, connecting with what you want and need. So when you're mindful and you're present, you go from what you think you should or are supposed to be doing to what you want and need. So you can connect with how you feel emotionally. And then what do I need right now in this moment? So do I need to get out of this house because I've been in here too long? And so I need to go for a walk. Do I need to go get my app and, do some deep breathing? So it's connecting with what you need and what you want, and disconnecting from everything else that's going on around us that's out of our control.
Hence mindfulness. That's beautiful. KaCey, talk to us a little bit about mindfulness. Self-care. Excuse me.
Oh, absolutely. It's really critical in staying calm through the chaos. And for me, I take time to listen to music. Music is therapeutic for me. That means sometimes turning it up really, really loud and dancing along, or just sitting and listening to it. Self-care for me is also, I do a lot of audio journaling. So I use the voice memos on my iPhone. And for me, it's something very powerful to then hear my words back in my own voice when I need that pick me up, when I need to affirm myself and encourage myself. And so
I think we might be having a little bit of technical difficulties with KaCey. KaCey, we'll come back to you. Dan, can you tell us a little bit? I think KaCey's back. KaCey? Okay, we'll go on to you, Dan. How do you practice self-care? What does self-care mean to you?
So I just want to say, firstly, Crystal, I love how she defined self-care. I think that was such an all-encompassing and wonderful scenario, definition. I've honestly never heard it better described. So I won't try to describe it again. But for me, self-care, particularly during lockdown, is knowing yourself. I think it can take a number of different facets. KaCey obviously mentioned audio journaling, and a number of people do different versions. For me, it was exercise, it was my blog, and just kind of getting my word out there, saying my truth, if it were. But at this moment in time, I've had the opportunity to redefine normal. I actually saw this quote on Instagram, and it says, we're all going through a storm, but we're in different boats. And I dare say, that is so accurate. When we've got different people in our boats as well. We've kind of gone through that today. We've got obviously our spouses, our partners, children, but we also, we're potentially caring for a number of other people and influencing them too. So for me, at this moment in time, self-care is defined by redefining normal and really understanding what I need and what I can do to meet those needs, especially with the demands of life. I've got exams coming up, and I'm sure other people have very high pressure, high stressful lives, and other things that they just essential things they just can't let go of. But taking that time to redefine and take care of yourself, even just doing the small things such as, dare I say, changing out of your pajamas, having a shave, or just general grooming, going for a run or a walk, as has already been mentioned, enjoying the colors. These small things are ways in which we kind of replenish ourselves and remind ourselves that we too are in deserve of our own love.
Oh, I like that. I love that. We are in deserve of our own love. We too need our love for ourselves. That's beautiful. KaCey, I believe we were having some technical difficulties. You're back.
I am. I'm so sorry. My power went out, which means my modem reset. So
no worries.
Yeah, music, audio journaling, and the last thing, and God knows exactly what he's doing, because perfect segue to what Dan just said, in the sense that I had to learn how to be worthy of my own time. And so for me, self-care means spending at least 30 minutes that is just dedicated to me. If it's sitting in silence, if it is just taking a walk, but just giving 30 minutes to myself, that I'm not answering anybody's text, nobody's phone call. I'm not thinking about what I need to do for anybody else, but learning that I am worthy of my own time, and I need to make sure that I make that a priority as well.
I appreciate that. As you were talking, I immediately thought about my sister. And she's the yin to my yang, the yin to my yang. Everything seemed to have happened about 2 years ago. So of course we like to do everything. We want to be everything to everybody. One day she told me, Paulette, take time for yourself. Mm-hmm. Just Just take time for yourself. I started stretching. Well, I've been stretching for several years now just because my body is not what it used to be. And so I have to stretch to loosen up my muscles and things. And she said, Paulette, when you stretch, go in your room and close your door. And don't come out until you're done. And y'all, I was about to say, y'all, don't you know? I've been doing that. And it's the most beautiful thing that my family can allow me to do for myself. But it's the most beautiful thing that I can demand that I do for myself. And it's wonderful. Thank you, KaCey, for speaking to that. Being worthy of your own time. That's critical. And your own love. Candance, talk to us really quickly about what you think self-care is, and then demonstrate the peace break, and then help guide us through a peace break.
Sure. So I love those two quotes, being worthy of your own time and deserving of love. And I think it's been a journey.
I think I'm having technical difficulties.
Oh,
Crystal, everyone here? Okay, perfect.
Yeah. The journey to self-care. And I think that this time has actually forced that on me, because I was not taking that time before, because I was so busy doing everything, taking care of everybody else, making sure everything was straight at work. But now God put the entire world on pause. The entire world is on a pause, a break, a stop. And it's like in Psalm, the 23rd Psalm, when it says, he maketh me lie down beside the green pastures. God made us stop. And so in this time with self-care, for me, it's actually every morning I get up and I walk at 7 o'clock in the morning. And the air is different. The earth is different. It's replenishing itself. And to be out in that early crisp air, seeing the flowers blooming, the trees budding, for me is probably the most important moment of my day, because I'm taking that time for myself. So I'm getting up early, but I'm enjoying the conversations that I'm having with God as I am walking in the mornings. And so for someone who tells everybody, you need to do this for yourself, I was never doing it for myself, but now I'm doing it for myself. So that probably is what, for me, self-care, making that time, not only making the time, but actually taking advantage of the time and doing it. So making the time and then following through to do it every day. It's really changing how I see things. And I know I do not want to go back to my life of overwhelm that I was living before COVID. So, and in the peace break, Paulette, when you asked me to do that, it's just deep breathing exercises. So if we can do this all together, you just sit back in your chair right now, and we're going to close our eyes. Each of us are going to close our eyes.
Now the viewing audience, you do the same thing if you feel so inclined.
Yes, unless you won't be driving as you're watching this. Okay, so close your eyes, and we're going to inhale peace and exhale fear. Inhale peace and exhale anxiety. Inhale peace and exhale stress. Inhale peace and exhale everything else.
I don't want to open my eyes.
That's the peace break.
Wow.
Take your
And
time.
you can feel yourself.
Yeah. Yep.
You can feel the release. It's calming. I feel very calm. Because before we got on the broadcast, I was getting ready, making sure everything was in order, and and then the thing went. So some anxiety had built up in my body, and I could feel it. I feel it in my shoulders, and in the back of my neck. And breathing, doing that deep breathing helps just to release those muscles and gets those lungs moving and circulating that oxygen. Thank you, Candance. That's beautiful. I appreciate that. You all, thank you so much for joining us. To Candace, to Dan, to Crystal, to KaCey, thank you for taking time out of your schedules today. And Dan, what time is it across the pond?
Let me just check here.
Okay.
It is 11 minutes past 1 in the morning.
Oh my goodness, we need to get you to bed. But thank you so much for saying yes, each of you. And thank you all for watching. Again, we were having technical difficulties earlier. Please watch this broadcast, share it, because there have been some gems that have been dropped today. You need this in your arsenal, your wellness arsenal, as you journey through COVID-19. Also, share this video, tag your friends, and spread the word. Visit the websites for Candace, for Dan, for KaCey. Follow everyone on Instagram, Twitter. All the information is in the description. Please take an opportunity to follow up on this and leave your questions. Everyone will come back and chime in. And thank you again for watching. Join us again tomorrow at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, where we talk about business revival in the era of COVID-19. Thank you, guys. I appreciate you. Thank you to Alexis Payne for providing technical support, and thank you for you all for watching. All right, have a great night. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Good night.
Thank you.
Night.